Welcome back to Sika Strength and welcome back to the Sika Stan news show. Today's news show was brought to you by the imminent release of the Sika Strength merch. It's the first time in a long time that we've done t-shirts. We've got the brand new design, the Ironworker, and we have, of course, the old school Republic design. So this is the first reprint of that in over 3 years. So stocks are limited, and there's a secret third graphic coming in honor of the 100th episode of the new show, so stand by on socials for that. Today's further news show is brought to you by the Sika Strength app on iOS and Android. App users will get early access to the merchandise, to get early access, a little secret link to buy it before it goes for general release 2 or 3 days later than that, so stand by. Orders imminent, ability to get it soon. Keep a lookout, stay sketch, keep an eye out, keep your blinkers open. Today's new show, starting off with Lasha. So we've got this 214 kilo snatch and a 246 kilo clean and jerk. So we're about 5 or 6 weeks away, 5 weeks away, I think probably about 6 weeks when this was done. And we've got that 205 and 212 before that.
This, particularly when you see the 212 snatch here, his snatch is looking very, very sharp. Obviously, we spoke about it last week and the week before that he's getting back in shape. People are commenting about what the eventual weight will be here. For me personally, just seeing how well these weights are moving is making me a lot more positive for what he's going to hit at the Olympics itself. But definitely, that 212 is up there. Like, snatches above 210 kilos are absolutely insane, but that is up there with how good his snatches looked definitely in the last 2 or 3 years.
So I'm probably going to call something like 218, maybe 219 and 260, which should be enough for the win. It's unlikely anyone else is going to pull out a massive snatch, but we probably will have some big mid-teen snatches, maybe some late-teen snatches if someone has a particularly good day, like maybe Gore, for example. And then the clean and jerks, he just needs to do enough to win. So I think Lasha is looking like he's going to be in good condition for that, and I think it's safe to assume it's probably going to be his last Olympics unless he takes a big time off.
I'm going to say it now, I think 221
221
in the snatch.
I'm going to put this on video and say I don't think we're going to see a 221. Yeah, I'd say it's unlikely. Oof. Next, we've got Julio Mayora. So this was actually from 3 weeks ago, and I don't know how we missed it, but this is a 170 kilo block snatch. Julio is a 73 kilo lifter. So, you know, we've seen, for example, Rizky and She and Ratmat snatching in the early to mid 160s. So this 170 obviously is massive for that 73 kilo lift. The blocks are, for some lifters, a massive bonus. Some people can get really high off blocks. Other people hate blocks. They hate that lack of time to get a lot of acceleration on the barbell. But then some lifters then can put themselves in a position that they just really enjoy and they find a lot of use in that. And most of the time, unless you've drastically worse technique, unless your technique is so poor compared to your snatch from the floor, it is beneficial to use those block snatches in the right circumstances if it makes sense for you. So, you know, for example, it's a bad idea if you're someone who leans back behind the barbell a lot, if you swing the barbell, if you get your hips into the barbell too early. High block snatches like this, terrible idea for you. But if you're someone who maybe has trouble snatching from the floor a lot, maybe your back gets really fatigued, maybe you have a hard time hitting that right speed during that second pull, block snatches can be a really useful addition to your training among, you know, low hangs and high hang snatches and other variations like that.
I think in this case as well, just focusing on how fast he gets underneath the bar, the high blocks are a great tool for him. You'll see how speedy he is underneath the bar. Obviously, 170 kilos, he's not going to get the same bar height on after that point of contact as he would with maybe 155 or 160. So going to 170 forces him to chase under the bar a small bit more, and definitely is a lifter who relies on that speed underneath the bar a lot.
I'd want to know what 786 libras is. Does that, because you got kilos, pounds and libras, is that something really obvious? I feel like that term sounds super familiar. But next we've got Islam Sherdiev, who is a Russian, I think he's on the Russian junior team. So this is from Lift or Die. You might recognize him from Instagram. And they're posting this 195 kilo clean and jerk, or clean and power jerk, which is quite interesting to see that. So it's 195 kilos. He's a 109 kilo lifter, but I'm pretty sure he's junior, so 20 or under. I think I've seen him on their other montages of those junior teams. And it is obviously a huge weight for any junior to be lifting. To be honest, it's a big weight for anyone to be lifting.
It's crazy
Do you know when you think about it?
Really is crazy weight.
When you think about 195 kilos, I saw this reel the other day, and I'm not going to say it was just yesterday, and it was talking about a tip on a lift, and I won't say what lift was because you have to find it, but it was basically like, and this is how I lifted over 400 pounds, but it was like a strength lift, you know?
Yes.
And I was like, that's cute, but then you have people like Islam just clean and jerking 195 kilos.
Yeah,
you know?
far in excess of 400 pounds.
Yeah, and it's a clean and jerk.
It's a clean and jerk.
Compared to a squat or a deadlift or something.
Yeah. The strange thing here, and it's not strange, but the first and second pull in this clean almost look like he's artificially slowed it down. Like, he doesn't look like he's trying to move fast at any point here. Yet that clean looks very easy for him. We've used the word pedestrian a lot here. But that clean looks simple for him.
That is actually a thing you'll see a lot with younger, talented lifters, is that their strength levels mightn't be enormous compared to their lifts from the floor. And so they are on their limits with that first and second pull. But because they're talented lifters, they can just hit that warp speed during the second and third pull and pull under. You know, we'll hear stories of people clean and jerking the most they've ever deadlifted from the floor, or, you know, there was the Indonesians who were assisting their teenage lifters with the first pull because they were so weak to break it from the floor. The coach would give a little hand to pull up the barbell, and then the lifter would get underneath themselves. And then sometimes they're helping them stand up from the front squat as well, wasn't it? So, you know, when you have talent, you can do a lot with talent, which is same with every sport, really. I suppose.
Not a feeling.
Next up, we've got Sergio Maceda. So this was from a couple of weeks ago, 210 kilo back squat. He was competing as a 67, but the last time we saw him, but I don't think he's a full 67. So it's quite interesting to see the Italian team, certainly the male team, doing some back squats. It's very interesting dynamic they have with their strength work.
Yeah, I'd love to know what the plan is for the kind of peaking or the tapering of the back squat. Obviously, you want to be getting stronger all the way up until the Olympics. You want that back squat top end strength to be kind of maintained very well, but there will be a point a couple of weeks out where you're probably not going to be pushing that back squat anymore. So I wonder, are we seeing the kind of point, the end of the spear at the moment? Maybe they're just pushing it for another couple of weeks, and then maybe taking the month of July where they're really not pushing the squats that much, maybe going back to squatting still the same frequency but just far less weight and definitely far less volume.
So I suppose when you think about it as well, you know, it is a very heavy squat for someone who's probably 70 odd kilos. Certainly not in the realms of, you know, if we've Lee Sang, who's a 73 kilo lifter, squatting 270, probably 75. But we know the Italians don't seem to favor super heavy back squats. They seem to like their front squats, and they do obviously include the back squat in their training. But we know from some other teams who've trained with them, we know from Gabriel mentioned a couple of years ago, the Romanian team sent the lifters to train with them and kind of see their system and spend some time training with them. And he said a lot of lifters came back and their legs were a lot weaker. Now, it seems like things have changed from them. And, you know, we see Nino seems to favour squatting quite a bit. He's a very strong front squatter and back squatter. But again, it's similar to, maybe you could place some similarities like the Russian team, for example, who don't really love going super heavy on the squats, but you'll find that they always can squat more than enough. So it's really a thing of, they don't need any more. Enough is enough for them. But sometimes with some of the Italian team, from what we can see, is sometimes it looks like the squat isn't something they're particularly great at in the back squat. Yeah,
definitely.
Obviously, Sergio is an incredibly good lifter, just to make sure that's clear. But it is an interesting dynamic of their team. Next up, we've got Monika, and she's clean and jerked 120 kilos as a 71 kilo lifter. As a junior lifter, or she's 20 years old at least. So junior in weightlifting is the year you turn 20. Very nice 120 kilo clean and jerk.
Yeah, we've talked about Monika before and having very textbook technique, and you definitely see it here as well. The weight here is insane, like 120 kilos as a junior, as Owen was saying, as a 71 kilo female is an amazing way to be hitting, but to be hitting it in this way as well. So if you just look, first pull is absolutely textbook, knees sweeping back off the floor. She's not really forcing them out to the side. Very, very good pull under. And then obviously a very nice jerk as well. Now, the other thing that comes with Monika is we talked about people having longer legs or not being the kind of stereotypical build for weightlifting. She's definitely in that class. She has kind of longer arms, longer legs, or a limier lifter, like we might sometimes refer to them. Yet she makes that kind of perfect technique model every single time, and even at these crazy weights.
She was on a big comeback from a quad tear at Europeans earlier this year. So really great turnaround time, in a couple of months to be back to these weights. Sure, this might be a competition PB. If not, it's very, very close to it. And my dream competition weight is 120, so certainly
nice.
A big day for her. Now, Dara's favourite weightlifter, Bektimur, a exceptionally nice weightlifter from Turkmenistan with this 180 kilo clean and jerk. So he's also a 73 kilo weightlifter. And this jerk was almost a squat split jerk.
Yeah.
It was deep.
Yeah, it's very common that people might short step a jerk, but he certainly did not short step this jerk. You really see it in that kind of recovery position then, because he's so deep with it, because he's so long with that, it takes him a bit of time to recover from that jerk. Certainly, it's not something you're going to be doing every single day. This looks to be pretty maximal for him in that jerk position. But as always, every time he comes up in the news show, an absolute magician technically.
Yeah, exceptionally good lifter. Now, speaking of Lee Sang, a few seconds ago, we've got Lee Sang couldn't but share this. Definitely one of the more frequently sent in things for this week's news show. So he said on Monday he did 110 for 50 reps Monday morning training. Up to 130 kilos, he did 40 reps. He finished at 50 at 110. Like, what? This is, I don't even know. People are like, so obviously work capacity, hypertrophy work, building lean tissue. He's not going to the Olympics, so he's probably pretty far. Korean Nationals just went. He hit his national record. He hit that 197. So obviously a very good day for him. I get the principle of what he's doing here. It's just quite the extreme end of that to go ahead and go do this for 110 for 50 reps. So this is quite literally in the realms of cardiovascular training. We don't know how long this actually took because he sped it up, but this is surely beyond a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes maybe. It easily took 2 or 3 minutes. So like you're in the realm of some cardiovascular training there. That's how long this set probably took him.
I feel like they probably said, Lee, you need to do some of your work capacity work now this week, and he just did it all in one set.
Or he had to do 5x10, but he had a train to catch.
Yes.
He had to get the last bus back to Seoul, and he was like, damn, I got to do all my sets in one go.
What kind of self-masochism is this?
I think he loves it.
I think he really does love it. You have to love it to be able to do this over and over and over again. Obviously, he went for 20 reps and 30 reps a few weeks ago. Like, he seems to absolutely adore the high rep sets. Now, it probably does well on social media as well, which is not to be sniffed at. Obviously, the athletes are building a profile for themselves, but there has to be some level of enjoyment here in doing these crazy, punishing sets.
Physique-wise, it's certainly a calorie burner. Like, you can eat a lot of Korean barbecue after this. Like, you could justify to yourself, like, you're
going for the double bucket. Like,
your exercise post-oxygen consumption here, like, is something you can really like to yourself and say that you burn a lot of calories. Now, obviously, Lee has no issue with body composition, but it's certainly not a bad idea. Remember years ago, it used to be like this idea that if you're doing like really high rep squats, you're just going to get like this diabolical release of growth hormone and testosterone after those squats. It was this whole body movement.
Yeah. It was something as well about using the hip joint in those.
Yeah.
They used to release more of that testosterone.
Maybe it's the jiggling of the testicles. Next, we've got Artyom Okulov. So he jerked this 220 kilos from rack. So Artyom, he's an 89 kilo lifter. Like, we haven't really seen him push his limits since the great bad hammer of 2015, 2016, the last couple of years, after that, after 2016 Olympics. So we don't really know what he's capable of in regards to the 89 kilo class, but we do know that this 220 is immaculate, and it is the most Russian of Russian jerks could ever be.
Oh, if Bektimur is my favorite weightlifter, then Okulov is my favorite jerker.
Arguably one of the best ever. Technically,
everything about his jerk just makes me feel something on the inside. The other thing about this video is those jerk blocks look like you could be servicing Soviet machinery on them.
But even still, they move, they are moving off the floor. Like, they're lifting off the floor, and they're as sturdy as you can get with jerk blocks, and they're still lifting off. So I'll tell you how hard a feat of engineering it is to get jerk blocks that don't make an absolute cacophony of noise. Wooden blocks are the best for noise absorption, but they break so easily if you use them regularly.
And as well, if you want to change the height of wooden blocks, you have to have like the index card to figure out which block will fit on top of the other block.
Yeah.
Because if you're dropping heavy jerks on those timber blocks, you might have used them in the past, but if you're like in a training center like this where there's 200 kilos getting dropped on them somewhat frequently, those timbers are just going to move slightly, and then you'll end up with basically a certain series of blocks that stack on top of each other but don't stack on top of the other blocks, and it's just a disaster all the way down.
Now, sticking with big jerks, we've got some 227.5 kilo jerks here from Lucas Hatton. Now, Lucas is obviously a strongman, but I slipped him in here into the weightlifting section because it is a very heavy rack jerk.
Yeah.
Lucas is 8 weeks out from a competition for the Shaw Classic, which a lot of them are heading for, and he said this is for the press medley. And the first thing that jumped out at me is there was two things. First of all, the first thing I noticed was the excellent lockout, full elbow extension, weightlifting comp legal jerk, which was the first thing, which I was very enamored by. But then the fact that he's jerking this off his wrists, was the second thing that I was like, that's pretty impressive. Not only, obviously, the third thing I noticed was the fact that it's 227 kilos.
Yes.
And, it's a fucking massive jerk.
No, it's so good as well. So with the strongman competitors, generally speaking, we're seeing a lot more of them do split jerks in the last kind of 6 months or so. Obviously, it's something that's catching on a bit more there. But one of the more common aspects that they miss out on is this continuation of drive as they come up out of the dip and drive. So a lot of the time they'll dip and drive, kind of shoot the bar to here, and even though they catch it in a split position, they still end up locking it out kind of in a secondary movement. In Lucas's case here, he drives continuously through the bar to that kind of comp legal lockout. It's a really, really good jerk. Obviously, his front rack position is the front rack position of a massive, big, strong man, which you really can't seem to get around.
The really interesting thing that's kind of floated under the radar a little bit is how much more popular strongman is getting in the last couple of years. Strongman was always kind of been around, ever since kind of the 90s, it being on TV on like Christmas Day for like World's Strongest Man. UK's been a big base for strongmen. UK and America are probably the only two countries really that had lots of recreational strongmen competing well before the advent of CrossFit. Weightlifting obviously had a little bit, but not that many really. Strongman has been kind of on a steady growth over the last 20 or 30 years or so, and there's definitely a lot more of those kind of near professionals and those kind of popular figures. So it is it's great to see. It's nice to see them getting their section, because it's definitely one of the easiest of the strength sports for the public to appreciate.
I definitely think as well, something that is holding strongman back is the barrier for entry is just so high. Like, all of the implements are just difficult, big implements. They're not in most of the gyms. So if you're doing a sport, like if you're doing weightlifting and yet you can't get a weightlifting barbell in any gym in your country, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to kind of appreciate what it feels like to do the movements. But it definitely is getting a lot more popular.
So onto the athlete section of the news show. This was definitely the most sent in thing from Kemari Copeland. So Kemari sent us this himself as well, just in case we didn't see it, but we did see it. So this is 605 pounds for a set of 10, which is 273 kilos for a set of 10. So Kemari is an American football player, a collegiate level football player, and you've definitely seen him on the news show before with some really big squats, really big deadlifts. But this is I'll tell you how impressive this is. This is the first thing I've seen since I did 300 that makes me want to start another strength squat.
Really?
Yeah, this is the first thing where I was like, oh, that would be nice. That's how impressive this is. That's what really made me go, oh my shit, this is fucking something else.
Yeah, it's the big thing with this set of squats for me is just how quickly he gets through it. There is no hang around. He takes a bit of a double breath on the second last rep, double breath on the last rep, but he does a really great job of getting kind of expediently through the set of squats. He doesn't waste a lot of time with it. It's not 10 singles one after another. He gets through the first 4 or 5, takes a few breaths, gets through the next couple of reps, takes a breath, and then it makes those sets a lot better. Like, the quality of the squats get a lot better, but also you're just less fatigued when you get to the last one. So it's a really, really good set, a very well done set of 10. If you're going for a 10 rep max, like you might be on one of our squat programs, this kind of pace or this tempo getting through it is definitely something you should be looking for.
So the bar position here is something that's very, very interesting, and we coach something quite frequently to tall lifters, maybe people built like Dara, or we build for people who are taller and big units, throwers, rugby players, is this kind of mid bar position, or we call it the hybrid bar position, where it's a low bar, or it's just on the edge of still being low bar position, and then we coach that through the kind of high bar squat positions, and it works out incredibly well for our big powerlifters, to be honest, any of our powerlifters, our athletes. It's something that we find is incredibly useful because it keeps it pretty well over that center foot or center of balance in the back squat. And this is such a great angle of this particular position here. And a lot of times lifters can stay really active in this position because it forces you to be a little bit more active in that position, but it also lets you keep a more consistent torso angle. So I said consistent, not super upright angle. So we're not looking for something like we might see Tan Tao squatting, but we're seeing a really consistent angle here. And we can see in Kemari squat that he is really consistent throughout, and it's a really powerful squat. And surely he does not need any more in his squat for American football. Surely. Does anyone know what are his prospects? Where is he going? I know he's quite young. I think he's only 21 years old.
Is he 21?
I think he's 21 years old.
My good God.
Amazing. Obviously, we're here for the squatting, but in terms of football, does anyone know the specifics of where he's going or what's ahead of him?
I hope he's great at football.
I really hope so.
Yeah.
That'd be so nice.
Yeah.
Now here is, and this isn't hyperbole, this isn't hyperbole.
Hyperbole.
This is the best technical power clean I think we've ever seen from an athlete.
It's Hyperbole Monday.
I am using major adjectives here. This is the best power clean technique I've ever seen from an athlete. This is
bloody gorgeous is what it is.
Harrie, who is a Dutch velodrome cyclist or a indoor track cyclist, and this is so good. This is as good as power clean technique can get for pretty much anyone. I was just enamored, blown away when I saw this.
Yeah, no, this is absolutely perfect. A couple of things here that maybe common areas where athletes or power athletes might fall down in their power clean. Usually we get a lot of elbow bend off the floor, particularly in their second pull. You'll see that elbow bend getting even worse. There's none of this in Harrie's here. Now, the second thing is what many people might call the football style squat or the football clean or the starfish clean. He has none of that here. His feet just move out slightly into that squatting or receiving position. This is an absolutely perfect power clean. It's great to see as well, obviously, the Dutch system or many of the European countries that have big athletic bases behind them bring in weightlifting coaches. And I've absolutely no doubt he's had some weightlifting coaching.
Surely.
Yeah.
Surely.
If he doesn't have, if he hasn't spent time with a weightlifting coach, his S&C coach must be very adept at coaching the power clean.
What I can't get over is the calf separation and density, and how important the calves are actually in knee tracking as well. It was something often forgotten about, even though it doesn't cross the joint. It plays a major role. But this technique, the pull under, a great hallmark of a good power clean is the vibration in the catch position. And he is vibrating. Harrie, unbelievable work at 140 kilos, casually doing it. Looks like he's about to power clean it up and put it back in the rack.
Yeah.
Now, here we've got Malin, and he is squatting 605 again for a single, but he absolutely demolishes this.
Yeah, it's such a good squat.
So, again, another American football player, and this is ridiculous.
You know what I absolutely adore as well about the American football weight rooms? There's lads literally hanging off the ceiling, hyping him up. There's somebody sitting on a power rack, there's other people standing on the racks, there's people on plyo boxes next to him. Everybody is so hyped. But in this case, we don't have any kind of big crowding and around them. So a lot of the time we'll see the max squat videos in the football weight rooms, and you'll see people literally wrapped around them. And in that case, if the barbell drops or something happens, maybe an injury occurs during the squat, you're not in the best position to firstly get out of the way of the barbell if the barbell is about to fall on you, or else come in and assist in a squatting fashion. So here we've a person on each side. We've a coach, or what looks like a coach, to be standing behind them. Pretty much a perfect setup for looking after the athlete. So
just a little bit of stats. So the coach confirmed 6'2" and 256 pounds. So that's 125 or 130 kilos. So an absolute monster. You don't want someone that height running at you that weight. You can squat probably 305, 310 realistically. Definitely certainly 300 or more looking at this quality of that squat. And in terms of the squat, again, we've got just a pretty much low bar position here, which is very viable for athletes. If you compare here to Kemari is wearing his Romilly 04s, which would be probably a great addition here. Now, obviously, getting your athletes in, you have a full team like this, and as a coach, it's very hard to be like, would you get a pair of weightlifting shoes?
Yeah.
They're like, nah, why would I need those? And you're like, they'd be really good for your squat. And they're like, oh, I forgot to bring them today. So in those kind of environments, you're doing the best with what you have. And obviously this is plenty good enough, but it is an interesting change to see how, you know, the differences in the, say, even just a little bit of bar position, shoe position, but both of them are moving the weight incredibly well.
I think for those of us as well who are involved in strength sports, whether it's weightlifting, powerlifting, strongman, CrossFit, whatever it is, you're involved in these sports, and squat weights, you almost forget how heavy those squat weights are because you see people lifting them on Instagram or online so often. You have to think as well that this is not his sport. Mm-hmm. This is just the thing he does on a Tuesday and Thursday morning. That's it. It's crazy.
Next up on the strength section, we've got Jenny Huang, and she deadlifted 170 kilos as a 60 kilo body weight, so no beltless. And I don't know if this is a PB, but I think she said it's a little beltless PB deadlift. So incredibly nice pulling. So just off the back of what Dara was saying there in terms of, you know, you're looking at, we forget how impressive some of those weights are, and you see 270, but if you look at maybe the IPF World's gone, you're like 270, but then you compare it to how many people can't ever squat 270 and never will, and then again, on the realm of that, the 170 kilo conventional deadlift for a female lifter is gigantic. It's huge. More female lifters will never deadlift 270, and certainly not conventional compared to who will. So it's very important in all aspects of training just to be blissfully or hopefully acutely aware of how impressive some of these things are and what social media might demonstrate you. So it could inspire you, or it could make you a little bit delusional, and it's really important just to understand how impressive a lot of these feats are, which is obviously the reason for the new show. But putting in perspective, things like this, you might see 170 and be like, oh yeah, 170 deadlift, isn't there girls pulling like 300, 290? But there's a lot more girls not pulling 170 when you think about it in that respect. Yeah,
100%. And as well, like, people are in it for different things. Whether the person is a full-time powerlifter or they're doing other sports makes a massive difference. In this case, it's really good conventional technique. So where he starts, as always, is start from the floor and work your way up. Feet are in a great position here, fully toes forward, able to put a lot of force down through the ground. The knees is the big thing I like to watch, though, on a conventional deadlift. So one of the common things we get in a conventional deadlift is people's knees will track back a bit too quickly. It ends up being very, very posteriorly dominant here. You'll see in Jenny's case here, she keeps her knees forward for a really long time, allowing the quads to maintain their engagement and allowing the quads to be involved in that lockout position as well. So it's a very, very good deadlift. There's a lot you can learn from looking at it.
Now, sticking with really good deadlifters, we've got Colton. So Colton, the limit breaker, he competed a couple of weeks ago with his sumo deadlifts, and we've got him in, I suppose, maybe his off season or the beginning of his prep, and he's doing 3x8 or 2x8 at 310 kilos conventional. Again, a very nice conventional deadlift on him. So you would see with the best people, or a lot of the very best all-round athletes, you know, they're really good at pressing, they're really good at squatting, and if they're conventional deadlifting, if they're sumo deadlifting, there's a good chance they probably have a very good conventional in their kind of back pocket. So it's not like a certain group, a certain demographic of 17-year-old SARMs up teenagers who are deadlifting 300 kilos and they can't squat 180. You know, with these elite powerlifters, we see people who have a big deadlift, but they've also got a big squat and they've also got a big bench press. They almost always are like the best of the best and will almost have this kind of very solid conventional deadlift in their back pocket. You know, we're not seeing crazy discrepancies between everything, and Colton here is kind of demonstrating that, I think, pretty well.
Yeah, I think the other thing with that class of powerlifter, a lot of the time they're using the conventional as a training tool. They use the sumo as the competition tool. Obviously, it's easier to lift heavier weights. They have that biomechanical advantage that comes along with sumo positions. But the sumo isn't necessarily the way they're training their deadlift all the time. And seeing here him going back to multiple sets of 8 or 9 reps in this case is very, very useful for just making them stronger.
Now, speaking of someone who's stronger, we've got, from the IPF world, we've got Jesus Olivares squatting 455 kilos. The notorious 1,003 pound squat. Both of those are kind of work, don't they? They're both kind of nice numbers.
Yeah.
405 or 455 and 1,003. So pretty casual day in terms of the lifts for this. You know, it's massive Jesus never leaves it in doubt with depth either.
No.
In his training, everything just looks the same. And I think that really stands him in competition, where from my knowledge of competitions from him, we don't see him really mess up at competition. He seems, certainly at least in one particular spectrum, of he doesn't mess out the depth. He doesn't miss that depth a lot. He's very consistent with it, and I think that's how you should be training. I don't think you should be thinking it's there on the day. I know, for example, we saw with Colton, who was squatting high, and he was saying this himself, but then when he was coming into competition, it did pay off for him. But then we've had other lifters who very recently, even at IPF Worlds, who were squatting a little bit high and it didn't pay off for them, and it is a dangerous game to be playing. So it's a better, unless you've got proven track records of yourself, the squatting to depths, being sport specific is a better scenario, certainly for mere mortals as well.
Just looking at this video, he brings up a point. He said, there'll be a day when I won't be able to do this anymore, so take every opportunity or whatever. And then he says this is number 13 so far. I don't know if that's 13 world championships, or I don't know if it's 13 squats over 1,000 pounds.
I feel like it's 13 squats over 1,000 pounds.
Anyway, it's absolutely crazy. And this brings up the interesting point of, for these super heavyweights, it is a limited time. You're not going to see these numbers forever. Obviously, competition at the top level is always going to be limited. You're never going to be there, even if you're an international sprinter. You're never going to be sprinting internationally forever. But for the super heavyweights, that time clock is a little more restricted. The amount of decrement they're doing to their health, the amount of damage they're doing, how difficult it is to live everyday life shouldn't be understated. And for guys like that, when they're that big, it does take a big toll on them. And so hopefully he will get back or hit some massive numbers and then pull out in a fashion we'll probably see similar to Lasha doing.
Next up, we've got Kim Ujarak. So he is a strongman, but definitely got one of the more aesthetically pleasing strongman deadlifts. So he said 325 kilos for a set of 5, or 320 kilos for a set of 5 on the deadlift, and he said light work, and I think everyone would agree that this is light work. So very, very nice deadlift. Sometimes with strongmen, very often in competitions, you're allowed hitch, and some of them will make strong use of that in their training deadlifts, but certainly not looking at this set of 320 by 5 from Kim. This is very consistent. He must be a very tall dude, because this almost looks like he's stiff-legging deadlifting it, but he has got a lot of leg engagement in it, so I'm assuming he's a bit of a giant.
I'd say he is. He looks massive. But it does look like a stiff-legged deadlift, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Yeah, you look at the start position and it's not a start position for a stiff-legged deadlift, but almost immediately he goes to that vertical shin position. It's an unbelievable feat of strength just to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then obviously with the speed and the aggression that comes along with it, it makes it even more impressive. But to be almost stiff-legged deadlifting that weight for 5 reps is unbelievable.
Yeah, to be honest, deadlifting 320 at any point is a massive feat of strength. Even whatever the new show shows you every week, it's still, if you ever deadlift 320, you're one of the strongest humans ever. Now, speaking of probably one of the strongest humans ever, we've got Kyle Kirby, and he is squatting 705 pounds for a set of 3 high bar. So 705 pounds is 320 kilos. So massive gargantuan weight to be tripling in the high bar squat. And he said he can't wait till he gets back to low bars. He said this is going to feel even lighter. I think it's really funny on this is, so when we're high bar squatting, we're looking for a lot of thoracic extension, and we want to maintain that thoracic extension. If we look at people like, for example, Carlos Nazar, we were talking about last week, as he squats up, he moves into more thoracic extension to maintain those positions because it's vital for the high bar squat. But then we get massive dudes like Kyle here who just, for reasons of mass and probably not using a whole lot, don't have a lot of that thoracic extension available to him. But what they do have is absolutely buckets full of brute strength. And you can see that in the bottom position where we've run into that ankle flexion or ankle range of motion limit, and we've run into that upper back limit, but he's still just powering through these squats.
Kyle absolutely buries these squats as well. And I remember he was on the news show probably around this time last year, if I remember correctly, and it was the same thing with the squats. He's absolutely burying them. This angle gives you a very good insight of it. Certainly we don't see that kind of depth from the massive dudes all that often. There's a couple of strongmen we see doing it that deep, but in Kyle's case, they always seem to be that deep.
Now we've got a very frequent proprietor of the news show. We've got Jan, and he is deadlifting 420 kilos for a set of 3. So 420 PB triple, obviously, and a massive deadlift. We saw him do stuff like 300 kilos for a set of, I think it was like 15 reps or 13 reps on the deadlift. And he was obviously, that was a couple of weeks ago, so this was obviously going in one direction. That was going for a massive deadlift. So 420 for a triple. I assume he's going to be going for maybe 440, maybe 450. Look at this, if I had to guess. That is going only one place, I'd imagine.
It's amazingly strong in his second and third deadlift as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, his position is almost better. Obviously, a lot of the time we're better organised during that second and third deadlift. Some of the time we'll have some of that post-activation potentiation, but to be able to keep that level of positional prowess, to be able to keep that technique so good during the second and third rep when he's just barely tapping the ground on it. Obviously, he doesn't have to do the work of developing all that tension again, but it definitely is a very good feat of strength to be able to do that. I think 420 or 450 is definitely, 440 or 450 is definitely doable here.
You know, it's funny, in the background you can see a guy standing next to the cable machine, and there's things in like conventional or commercial gyms where you might not be incredibly au fait with strength training. I'm not saying this guy isn't, I have no idea who he is, but where even it's big enough lift that everyone understands that you kind of just need to stop for a second and let the person do that, because they're taking everyone's strength from the room while they do that lift. They'll give it back after, but you just need to be patient while they do their set, and then you can kind of continue on with their day. There's some lifts that are so big. Now, the embarrassing thing is, though, if someone makes a big hype about it and then they fail, nobody gets their strength back. Everyone's embarrassed. Everyone's got secondhand embarrassment. It's like, oh dear.
That oxygen doesn't come back into the room either.
No, you lose it. It has to be a successful lift for the oxygen to come back. Now here we got a world record squat by Anatolii Novopysmennyi. He is from Ukraine, so this was 370.5 kilos, and he was in the 105 kilo class. Now the interesting thing about this is, and a lot of people seem to agree with him, one of the commenters said, no doubt he had more here, but I've seen deeper squats red lighted all week. Now to me, I would be probably the harshest critic here at Sika Strength in terms of people squatting to depth, but I never even fathomed that this was anything incorrect about depth or there was any issue with this depth. So it is interesting what people see in the observer and finding depth position, what's deep. Like, to me, this looks plenty deep for an IPF competition squat, but clearly it wasn't all week, or in some people's opinion it wasn't all week.
I think depth is very funny as well. So when we're looking at depth from a front on angle, the main thing that alters how we view that depth isn't necessarily whether they're pushing their knees forward more or their lever lengths. What really affects it is the height of the camera. So if that camera is set up at eye level for the lifter, then seeing that depth will look very different from if that camera is set up at knee level to the lifter. And this is a big thing that we come up against very, very regularly when you look at lifts on social media. And suddenly, because that camera is set a bit lower, the camera is set a bit higher, suddenly a squat that would look absolutely perfect from the side angle now looks like it's a little bit dodgy. And that's because what we're looking at is we're looking at that height of the hamstrings underneath the perceived height of the knee. Now, in my opinion, the biggest thing powerlifting needs to sort out is these anomalies from federation to federation, and really just nailing down a better system of doing it rather than having a judge looking at it or anything like that. I think it's really, really easy. You just put two little markers on that. Head of the femur must pass below the height of the knee joint or whatever bony landmark you want to place that marker on. Makes it really easy. Then nobody is in question. No judge has to be blamed. No federation has to be talked about. You just have a marker on the femur head, maybe a marker on the side of the knee. Once that passes below that level, everything is done. Everyone's good to continue on. And
a better way of measuring the pause in the bench press, because I had an athlete competing a few weeks ago and it was literally a 3-second pause. Crazy stuff. So here we've got Teo Zilla. So this is 240 kilos for a set of 10 with no shoes on, so barefoot, high bar squat. He looks to be some kind of physique athlete. He's competing in bodybuilding competitions. No idea what weight he is, but if I had to guess, somewhere 90-ish kilos, 95-ish, certainly not in the triple digits. So this is a crazy impressive set of squatting, and great dorsiflexion available to him. Nice consistent back angle, really nice wrist position here for a lot of the squats. I know it gets a little bit fatigued as he gets later on, but it's a very, very, very impressive set of squatting.
Great quad and hamstring development as well, it has to be said.
Yes.
He looks to be absolutely ripped. You know it's good hamstring development when you're seeing it in the squats.
Yes.
Like your low body fat percentage when you look that ripped. Usually you'll see it in the calves. The calves don't tend to hold as much of that kind of subcutaneous fat, but definitely when it looks that ripped, that high up in the leg, so you're doing something right.
Yeah, if you have that much, if you're squatting that much and you've got that much hamstring available to you. So lastly, we've got John Hack squatting 335 kilos. He was on Larry Wheel's YouTube channel just recently, and they were talking about, his kind of competition and what he has from left in him. And obviously a good comp squat for John Hack is somewhere around the 360 mark. And he said in that video, he thinks he has one more competition in that sub 90 kilo class. So whatever that was in pounds. And then he thinks he might move up after that. So I am both very excited to see what he'll do if he gets into that sub 90 kilo class again, which we've seen him do. He's gone for 2 or 3 weight cuts in the last year or so, and he's pulled out like a kilo or 3 kilos short, where he said he just did not feel good and it didn't matter. But I'm also very interested in seeing of what he's going to do when he moves up. So if he's going to be in that sub 100 kilo class or whatever the next appropriate class is for him, because I assume he's going to make some massive numbers go up.
That's what I want to see. I want to see 105 kilo John Hack just absolutely smashing weights. It's always better, I think.
Yes, because bigger weights is better.
Yeah, bigger is better.
Now, if you need bigger weights, head over to the Sika Strength app on iOS and Android, because we just finished with the squat. There is 2 of our famous squat programs, Road to Newer Squat Part 1 and Part 2. Part 2 is 12 weeks long. Part 1 is 8 weeks long. It's a lot more aggressive. And as many of you know, week 4... Day 2 is notorious, and lots of people, quite literally thousands of people, have conquered it. So head over to Sika Strength app on iOS and Android. To be linked down below. 7-day free trial for everyone who signs up, so you can have a look around. Lots of big updates coming to the app, but one of them is unlimited tokens per month. So originally we had a limited number of tokens for programs, and now you can select between any program during that month, and there will be many more big updates coming, of which if you're active on the app, you'll be receiving further updates. Or if you want to join our newsletter, just go over to sikastrength.com and you'll receive updates on what we're doing here at Sika Strength, plans for the app. And maybe, because the newsletter is brand new, we might even let the newsletter people know when the merch is coming early, so app people have it first. And then if people are signed up to the newsletter, maybe there'll be another email for them before general public, because it is limited stock. Obviously, we don't really know how many people are going to buy t-shirts, so we had to hedge our bets. And keep an eye out for that. So head over iOS and Android for the app, or check out the newsletter on sikastrength.com, where we'll actually do a newsletter, an actual update. It won't just be targeted marketing. It'll quite literally be Dear Diary, today in Sikistan.
Here's my favourite squat from this week.
So hopefully you enjoyed that. Check it out below. The links will be there. Thanks for everyone who sends in stuff for the new show. Obviously say this every week, quite literally every week for nearly the last 2 years, but it is it's so strange that nearly 10,000 people every week tune into something, and so many of you are like, oh, I better send this to the lads for the news show. It's just so interesting. It's so not strange in a bad way, but just almost I don't know, what would you say. It's amazing that people want to see what we think. It's kind of
it really is, yeah.
It's just incomprehensible, I think, is the word. It's so novel that people want to see what we think about these things and to share them. So we are very appreciative of people sending stuff in every week. Again, I looked through every single one of those over the last week. It often takes an hour or more to look through those DMs and check them out. So we're very appreciative, and do please keep DMing those into us.